Managers are looking for a consensus. Leaders got to make tough decisions that somebody's not going to be happy about. We all saw that DeMar Hamlin situation a year ago with Cincinnati and the Buffalo Bills. Well, I'm on call that night, and I didn't have a manual that ever taught me what to do in that situation, because there's a process, there's policies, but then there was a human element. I never once, in all of my time on this earth, saw human trauma play out in front of 25 million people.
We don't stop. All right. I said we don't stop. We don't stop. Outside, inside, we don't stop. Global, worldwide, we don't stop. From the bottom to the top, we don't stop. From the burbs to the block, we don't stop. Outside, inside, we don't stop. Global, worldwide, we don't stop. From the bottom to the top, we don't stop. From the burbs to the block, we don't stop.
Integrity and truth. His path is lit, turning challenges into big wins. From the gridiron to the boardroom, his legacy is one of excellence and leadership. As the 7th overall pick by the Miami Dolphins in 1992, he embarked on a remarkable football career that included 5 Pro Bowls and multiple prestigious awards. But Troy's journey extends beyond the game itself. A visionary in every sense, Troy transitioned to a pivotal role as the Executive Vice President of Football Operations for the NFL. In this capacity, he continues to contribute to the sport he loves while touching the lives of players, coaches, and fans. Troy's commitment to education and empowerment led to the creation of the NFL Business Management and Entrepreneurial Program. Recognizing the need for athletes to possess business acumen, Troy initiated this groundbreaking program that equips players with essential skills to navigate entrepreneurship and financial management. Yet, Vincent's impact is felt beyond the NFL. As a faith-driven humanitarian and executive, he champions transformational leadership development for corporate executives and fosters opportunities for future leaders. His foundation, Love Thy Neighbor, stands in the gap for under-resourced communities, offering education, mentorship, and support to students in need. With a heart rooted in service, Troy Vincent is truly inspirational. Lewis Carr and the Waymaker Summit welcome Troy Vincent.
Coming on one more time for the one and only Troy Vincent and Lewis Carr.
Welcome, Troy, to the Waymaker Men's Summit. It is a privilege to have you here. You know what it's like being on the big stage. All right, and how have you been able to navigate from having the camera on you all the time to now being in the background of sometimes giving direction to the cameramen and sometimes giving direction to the players on and off the field?
It's been one, I want to say thank you for allowing me to come and just share a few thoughts about my journey. It's been an interesting journey, never wanting to be out front, but just always looking for a way out. And when I transitioned from the game, I wanted to still be in a position where I could move from being a participant on the field to someone that still could be a contributor to the game that has done more for me and my family than I could ever do for it. And I'm always reminded about the challenges that come along with the game that I love, football. And you hear some of the stories about the violence, the physicality. But there's no other institution that employs more black millionaires than the National Football League. And I'm proud to say that. So there's that fighting for the game and fighting for these young men, and in particular men of color. This game presents an opportunity that other industries do not present, Lewis. So it's been a journey, one that I embrace, one that I don't take lightly, and I have a true understanding that while I'm in the position, I refuse to be an armless chair and an empty suit. And that's always been my take. From the day that I left high school to go to college, just looking for a way out for my mom and I, and not being in the seat and not make a difference.
Well, Troy, you know, the thing that we've been talking a lot over the last few weeks, and from the first time I spoke to you and I interviewed you for Waymaker, you always use that word team in every situation. Whether you were talking about your foundation, you're talking about we got a great team, or whether you're talking about in the NFL corporate world, we got a great team, or whether you're talking about great teams on the field. Tell us why that TEAM is so important to you.
I've just never seen success done individually. I just feel like it's always about people. Your family is a team. When I played, whether it was a student athlete at the collegiate level, high school level, I was part of a team, and when team wins, everybody enjoys the success. I'm just a firm believer that you win with people. And anytime you try to get outside the vein and it becomes about you, the team's going to fail. That's just the way I was just wired and what I've learned, because I've seen a tremendous amount of success in the corporate world and athletics. And most of the coaches, I've had some great coaches, it was always about team, never about a prima donna.
Our theme is being outside of your comfort zone. Tell us about some situation in Troy Vincent's life where he had to make that transition from being comfortable to being uncomfortable. And what are some of the tools that you dealt with to sort of make the transition a little easier for yourself?
Well, I live in an uncomfortable world daily. That's part of what God has presented for me in my life. Lewis, I would share with the audience, it's been simple. At the age of 16, I gave my life to Christ. And I say that on that particular day. And this is, again, this may be for someone in the room. It may not be, maybe someone that's tuning in. But I live a life of 4 non-negotiables. And I've lived on these 4 non-negotiables since the age of 16. 1, I do not compromise or negotiate my walk with Jesus Christ. It doesn't matter the setting. Who's in front of me? That's a non-negotiable for me. And everybody knows that. If you invite me here, I'm going to talk about my walk with Christ. The second is my family. My beautiful wife, Tommy, and our 5 beautiful children. And we have 6 grandchildren with number 7 on the way. That's a non-negotiable for me. Through the highs and the lows, I'm going to fight for my family. So be careful what comes out of your mouth about my family. That third non-negotiable is violence against women and young girls. That's a non-negotiable. I grew up in a violent, that's all I saw. That's a non-negotiable. At the age of 16, when I gave my life to Christ, I realized physically I can now take on that bully. So that's that third non-negotiable. And then the fourth, which I think we compromise in this room oftentimes, I do not negotiate with lazy people. And we know when we talking to a jive turkey that's in front of us. I just use that old term, but we know when that person's in front of us is putting it on. He's lazy. He's not willing to put in the work. So I stand on those four principles or those non-negotiables in the way I manage, the way I raise my children, and the way I make decisions.
So when you find yourself in spaces, I imagine when you went from being on the field to being in the executive offices of the NFL, was that an uncomfortable space?
Wasn't at all. I just changed uniform. I was a labor leader for 13 of my 15 years. So I ran the Players Association. I was vice president and president. For me, it was always simple. The game was at the center. We can make money, but you got to do right by people. To me, that's always simple. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you. I know you have your contingency that you need to go and talk to about what's important to them. And I have these 1,900 players that's active and these 10,000 that's retired that's counting on me. So that's the same. Today it's about the player, the fan, and the owner. It's not about making difficult decisions. I stand on being firm, fair, and consistent. So dealing with the people that I have to deal with on a daily basis, that's the coach. That's the player. That's the general manager. I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be firm. And I'm going to be consistent because the game deserves it.
We were talking backstage, and I didn't know this, that the controversial calls or the calls that are in question, they come to you. So Troy is also in charge of the officials on the field when we're watching the game. So when they say we got to go upstairs, they go into him. Okay. And he makes that decision. How uncomfortable is that on the weekends?
So Louis, that's a team. Again, I have a phenomenal group of individuals and colleagues, Walt Anderson, Perry Fuel, Coach George Stewart, used to coach down here, and coach here. When those calls come, I mean, we're versed on the topic. We know gamesmanship when we see gamesmanship. We got to make a call. We got less than 1 minute for the general public. Get the call. It's about making the clear and obvious decision. And we're in a different world from most of the era when many of us grew up because now we've injected technology. Unfortunately, I can always find the foul when I slow it down. I want you to keep that in mind. So anytime I go to replay and I start going frame by frame, it distorts the version of what's actually happened in real time. So we get the call. The individuals are sitting next to me. We make a decision. The only decision that I am saying making the call on is the ejections. So any ejections on the field, that is my call individually.
It's been some bad calls, though.
Ejections.
Not the ejection part, but the Rams, they got a bad call the other night. So
that's part of the game.
So, Troy, tell us about, the NFL went through this phase with Colin Kaepernick. We all heard his name come back up on Tuesday morning when Aaron Rodgers went out. Has the NFL moved beyond that situation? Have they been able to put that behind them as we sit here today?
Louis, that's part of our history. I was at the table. That's my era. In interesting times, that wasn't the first time we introduced ourselves to social justice. In this era of football, it actually was after the murder of Michael Brown. That's when we began Aeneas Williams in that group in Ferguson. The Colin is part of like Michael Vick. That is part of the NFL's history. What was or what wasn't. I do know it's 2023, and there are some young men that's looking for me to celebrate them. So I think the Colin piece, and I'm a huge supporter of, we all are, of what he was looking to stand for. But that was just, as I would say, that's part of our history. What do we learn from it? And let's move on.
How is the NFL sort of addressing the pipeline of young people, whether they're coming through the NC2A and those college teams, or whether they're coming from high school teams, or whether they're even coming even younger than that, especially when we have these reports of injuries that are hurting players today for the rest of their life?
Football is a contact sport. And you all know what you sign up for. Now, I must say, the game has evolved. And in my 14 years, this is where I spend most of my time, is in this space of player health and safety. And I always use the term of protecting players from unnecessary risk, because the game is full of risk. But how do we prevent the unnecessary risk? The technology, the science, the engineering that we see today. When I played in the early 90s and coming up through the early 2000s, I was taught to harm people. That's what the coach at the high school, collegiate, and even at the pro level, I was taught to put him to sleep, send him off in the stretcher. That's like common language. And Lewis, that's not the way the game should be played. I never forget Willie Lanier, the great Willie Lanier, linebacker from the Kansas City Chiefs. He told me this back in early 2000, Troy, whatever you do, do not allow this sport to become a blood sport. That individual that you're playing against on the other side wants the same exact thing that you want. He wants to go home in one piece. He wants to be able to take care of his family. And when he said it, it resonated. Like, we got to take care of each other. There was an era where everything we sold the violence. That was commercials. You got jacked up and so on and so forth. It's a different game. And I would just say to those that have been involved, as you think of, as you think about our game today, but that's leaders, that's leadership. Okay, what are we going to do to change that perception? You get behind it, you make some adjustments, but that's leadership. And one of the things, Lewis, I would just say also is, as you all think about what are some things I can take away, leaders are individuals that you're not looking for a consensus. Leaders make decisions. Managers are looking for a consensus. Leaders got to make tough decisions that somebody's not going to be happy about. And I just think the things that we've done together with the players, because the decisions that you all make, that I made at 21, they show up at 30. And the decisions that you make at 30 show up at 50. Both good and bad. But you don't think about that when you're young. But that's truth. That's real. And the same thing, I had no remorse for my body at the age of 21. Would do anything with it. It showed up at 30. It shows up at 50. So just being able to make some adjustments so that the game that we all love, or those who participate and play it, it's just a different and a better game today.
Talk about what has been some of the toughest decisions you've had to make in regards, whether it was on the field or off the field.
Some of the toughest decisions is sitting down someone that he's a great player, but he just can't alter his behavior on the field. You got to sit him down to get his attention. And when I say sit him down, there's a suspension. I felt like COVID, making decisions around COVID, and we all were affected by that because people were literally dying. How do you make the proper decision in ensuring people that when they came to work that they were going to be safe? Those are tough decisions. Moving away from an employee. Those are tough decisions. Lifetime workers, they've been there for you through the thick and thin, but that there's a time that you have to move on. The Bible is clear about those who you've began with, you won't end with. And those same principles apply in the workplace. I started with you. I'm not ending with it. Doesn't mean that you're not worthy, or I'm better, or you're worse, or vice versa. But we got to move on.
You have a tough job, Troy, of working with millionaires, people who are not wedded to a check because they've got big checks. What are your leadership skills in working with people who you just can't motivate them by money?
Those are hard issues. I don't deal with them at that level of the economics. I deal with them at the value level. They all have children. And let me say, there's this perception that the owners don't clear. There's the billionaires and even the players. But when you take people down to a human level, children, fathers, wives, daughters, and you start talking about issues that matter to all of us, community, people listen. I look for alignment in things, and then you have to make a decision. There's a choice that you have to make. Here's why I'm sharing this with you, and here are the repercussions if we do it this way. Most of my job is risk mitigation. And what is risk mitigation? My role is to share with the commissioner of the National Football League, if we go in this direction, here's the ramifications. And to present him viable options to make an informed decision. Should the game move on? Oh, you asked, I'm going to go back one because you asked about a decision, a tough decision. We all saw that DeMar Hamlin situation a year ago with Cincinnati and the Buffalo Bills. Well, I'm on call that night, and I didn't have a manual that ever taught me what to do in that situation, because there's a process, there's policies, but then there was a human element. I never once in all of my time on this earth saw human trauma play out in front of 25 million people. And having to talk to the coaches and the referee, Sean Smith, at that time, real time, on trying to calm nerves and checking in on the men, because at that time it was about their hearts. The young man was fighting for his life to call the game off with no manual, but it was the right thing to do. Most of the time we play under any circumstances. That particular night, we couldn't play. You just couldn't keep going.
How great is the responsibility to represent the National Football League that is primarily made up of men who look like the men we have in this room? Is that an added sort of weight on you when you think about that responsibility, that you are the highest ranking African American in the NFL front office, and you have these men on the field who are young, who are wealthy, but they need guidance?
It's a tremendous, it's an opportunity, a tremendous a platform. I'm extremely grateful. Troy was born black. I'm not going to change that. That's a fact. When I walk into the room, I walk into a room with authority because I know my stuff. I know my material. You know, Lewis, it's a tremendous responsibility I'm in a position. My role, I lead America's biggest and most popular entertainment property in America. Not just sport, but that was a process to get me there. And I just go back taking those incremental steps, and at the end, it was really always been about, can God trust me? Because we all talk about increase my territory, I want more, I want a promotion. At the end of the day, God promotes.
Come on now, you better come through. You better come through.
And we have to ask ourselves, are we truly prepared and equipped to handle what's necessary in the current role? So I don't take that for granted, but that goes back to those 4 non-negotiables. And I always think about next man up. Always, next man up. And if I fail, no one's coming behind Troy. That's a reality in most of our worlds. If I fail, so I got to come right all the time. But I take that as a personal and a godly challenge.
The reason I asked that, Troy, I'm going to get to some of these men's questions right now. If anybody's ever been to the Super Bowl, it is the greatest show on earth. And remember, I got the BET Awards, right? But that's the greatest show on earth, the Super Bowl. The number of people, the spectacle that it's put around it is the greatest show on earth. And to know that you are part of that front office is something we as black men should be proud of. I mean, to understand whether we celebrate our politicians when they get to these, the first, but for you to be in that position is a huge deal, and we're thankful that you're there.
Louis, can I just share one thing before you ask the question? It's just something, and I have those 4 I call non-negotiables, but I was listening to the mayor, and I always like listening to people when I do come out and speak. I want the Spirit to tell me what I need to share with the group, and I would just share this with the men that's in this audience today. What we tolerate, we will not change. I want you just to hold on to that one for what we tolerate, we will not change. And we think about our communities. Guess what? We're tolerating it. And then second point and this shows up every day and I watch it play out. The compromises of today becomes tomorrow's standard. So I want you to think about in your daily life, the compromises of today. When we compromise, go ahead, you can do it. No, it's all right, you can do it. That compromise becomes tomorrow's standard. Now I'm chasing my tail.
Wow.
Can you get any Super Bowl tickets for brother?
I'm sorry.
It came from me. Me and you got the same jacket on. You get that at Macy's?
One more time.
Let me ask the first part, of course. Can you get any brothers some Super Bowl tickets? I'm going to take a little chick with me. Okay, don't worry about it.
That's possible.
Okay, and did you get that jacket, because it's the same as mine? Did you get that at Macy's?
I actually got mine at Sears and Roebuck's. No.
You always want to be funny. Boy, I tell you.
Troy, one of the questions, have you had to discipline or move away from anyone threatening the integrity of the game?
Yes. That's part of, frankly, that's my primary role on Game Ops. When you all and the general public lose trust that there's integrity issues, you're going to move away. I'm not here to talk about another sport, but we don't have to chase what some other sports are chasing based off of some of the decisions that were made and findings in other sports. So you guard that. I have to guard that, and the team has to guard that like no other. Public trust is everything.
What is the NFL doing to protect players after they have been diagnosed with CTE?
Great question. I think over the years, I know over the years, both leaderships at both the Players Association and the NFL in particular from Paul Tagliabue, commissioner, and then now current, there's been a lot of resources to taking care of those that have been diagnosed with CTE. Not only CTE, but all ailing injuries. We have a hospital network. Our benefits for those who have been, as we would call, veterans that have played 4 or more years, those benefits are like no other employee benefits. And the young people, the young players are the ones who fund those benefits. So I would say the National Football League, on behalf of the National Football League and on behalf of the Players Association, they've taken care of those men. But think about it now. There was a 70-year run where that was just normal. Lost time is never found. Never. Can't make that up. All we can do is do better today based off of what we know and what we've learned to do better for the future generation.
Well, this question must come from someone who's wealthy in our audience. They said, what advice would you give to raising children in wealth, raising them to still have drive and to succeed, and embracing a culture while growing up in wealth?
Raising children in wealth. You can't give it to them.
Kevin? Must have been Derek sitting next to you.
Well, there's something about discipline that you as a parent, being intentional, working your skill, giving our children too much too early, too fast, to their detriment. I'm not a billionaire, but my wife and I, we did pretty well. We have 5 children. And that, from our oldest child, Desiree, to our twins, Hadassah and Tanner, and how we've raised them, and that financial literacy is critical. And they have to work. They have to work. They got to work. I mean, it's great that we can give and we can provide, but there's nothing like work.
You've played under several NFL coaches. Which one was the best one for leadership? Who was the best leader you?
They all had different styles of leadership. So in my life's playbook, my life's toolkit is what I would call, Coach Dundella, who was my high school coach, he was someone, I only played 1 year high school football, saw me in gym class, told me to come out the next year. There were some values about team and things that was fun. Barry Alvarez at Wisconsin. Ray Rhodes taught me more as a player. I mean, I was coached by Hall of Fame coach Don Shula, but when I went to Philly under Ray Rhodes and Emmett Thomas, I learned more about the game than I've ever learned before.
Did you hear him, Lewis? He said 1 year of high school and he went to pro. Won't he do it?
Won't he do it?
Won't he do it?
What has been your proudest moment?
But Lewis, Andy Reid was good. Andy was good. Andy allowed us, and what I would say why, each one of them, I took something from each one of their leaders. Andy had the ability, and still does have the ability, to allow you to be who you are without disrespecting your person that's next to you. As he would say, let your personalities go, but remember the guy next to you. You got to respect him.
Come on now.
You can play your music, but you got to put your headphones on. So Coach Reid was phenomenal in, as he would say, let your personalities go, but keep it inside the framework of the team.
What has been your proudest moment of your career?
My proudest moment is marrying Tommy Vincent, our 5 children. Lewis, the sport was just part of my life's journey. It was a means of a way of getting on to the next phase of my life. But being a father, I was raised by my grandfather. But being a responsible dad, raising 3 boys in this society, 2 daughters, and my kids they still talk to me. We can still have conversation. They still listen. My proudest moment was meeting the joy of my life, the rock of my life. Professionally to me, it was a blur, Lewis, quite frankly. 210 plus starts in 15 years. God gave me what I needed every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday to perform, but I never... I've had some moments on the field, but...
Troy, tell us about your foundation.
Love Thy Neighbor. So back in 1994, both my wife Tommy and I are from Trenton, New Jersey. And we just felt like we always wanted to go back to the city and provide means for young boys and girls at the elementary level. So we put on events at the Super Bowl. Our focus is on elementary education. We've been taken advantage of, as we would say, putting good resources to bad people. And then we learn those life lessons, those bought skills. But our foundation is to provide education resources for elementary schools around the country, for kids K through 5. We support teachers and empowerment zones and safe zones and making sure kids have what they need to be productive students.
Well, I want everyone to know that what you see here is real. I've experienced it as recent as this week. We're on a call, and we're trying to do something with the NFL. And, Troy asked, do you want to be a partner, or do you want us just to support you? And I jumped out and said, we want you to be a partner. And then we went on through the conversation, and he said, so how do you want to do this? How do you want to do that? And as we were talking, he said, you know what? Maybe we should just support you, because I'm not here to play any games. He said, we're going to do this for impact and meaning, or you're going to do it on your own, and we will just be a supporter. I was in the doctor's office on the Zoom when I was having that conversation. I said, my brother's just so real. He's just so real. So what you see here today is an example of a brother who's been at the highest level in his space and has not had to compromise who he is and what he believes in.
Come on now. Come on now. Come on now. Y'all show him some love. That's Troy Vincent.
Lewis, I owe that to every man in this room.
So
we don't have time to waste. We really don't, man. Tomorrow's coming with or without us. And the last thing I would just say, as we close, is our silence implies that we're okay with what's going on in our community. It really does. Our silence and the things that we say, what we see, these killings and these, listen, that's our responsibility. We cannot sit on the side. Our silence implies that we're okay with that.
Troy Vincent, we thank you so much, and the best of luck. And I'm going to do like the guy said on the radio to me the other day. He's going to be the next NFL commissioner, isn't he?
Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Troy